The Davos Question asks what one thing we could do to make the world a better place. The answer I offer is drug approval denationalization. In the United States, decades ago, Congress banned all new drugs and assigned the Food and Drug Administration the task of deciding whether to permit each new drug. New drugs are banned until individually permitted by the FDA, a system called pre-market approval. New drugs cure illnesses and save lives, but the process of drug development has become controlled and regimented. Of course, people want to know that drugs are good before they take them, but drug makers face extreme costs, delays, and uncertainties which suppress the development of cures that would have saved lives. Many important drugs simply remain non-existent during our lifetimes. Most sensitive drugs require a prescription. You must go to the doctor and get a prescription to get prescription-only medications. If the system already requires a doctor's prescription, do we really think doctors will prescribe bad drugs if approval is freed up? Piling the pre-market approval on top of prescription requirements is regulatory overkill. Also, there's product liability and malpractice to discourage bad outcomes. Big Pharma gets creamed on that front as well. So we have three kinds of control: court punishment, prescription requirements, and pre-market approval. I might add that we also have licensing of doctors, pharmacists, and so on. Economists who study the matter say the system is erred on the side of restriction, that the degree of control hurts more than helps. Freeing up approval would give the individual patient and her doctor greater control of the medical decisions they need to make. After all, they are the ones with local knowledge of the particular circumstances of that patient. Drug development leads to new cures that serve all of humanity. Drug patents are usually 20 years. Over time, the patent expires, the drug goes generic, becomes cheap, and cures humanity the world over. Wouldn't it have been nice if for the last 40 years the system had been freer and many vital drugs now unknown had come into existence? We suffer today because of decades of dampened, suppressed drug development. How can we improve our prospects for the next 40 years? An excellent idea is to recognize the drug approvals of, say, 15 governments around the world. That is, the U.S. system is reformed so that if the FDAs of other nations approve a drug for that country, then the drug is also automatically approved in the United States. So, say, if the Canadian FDA approves a drug for Canada, then the drug automatically gains approval in the United States. This reform should recognize, say, 15 countries: Britain, France, Sweden, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, what have you. The idea is familiar to economists working in the area. I'm not aware of any arguments against the idea. A good name for it is drug approval denationalization. Under that system, drug makers like Pfizer or Merck or Johnson & Johnson could then go to the national agency that is most likely to be efficient, friendly, and swift. If the agency in Canada is approval friendly, then drug companies might tend to go there. Maybe the agencies will grow to specialize by type of drugs. The drug companies will no longer be captive to a monopoly permitter. Now in the U.S., the FDA has a monopoly in giving permission. Under the proposal, the FDA would have to compete in giving permission. Some will raise concerns about a, quote, race to the bottom, that drug approval will become too lax. But do we really think that the agency in Canada is going to be too lax in approving drugs for the Canadian market? That's not plausible. Moreover, economists find other mechanisms protecting us: medicine itself, prescription requirements, product liability, a vast array of non-governmental assurances and certifications, and people's own demand for assurance. Together are plenty enough to justify a much freer or even totally free market in providing new drugs. If the patient and her doctors don't believe that a drug will help, its maker won't be able to sell it. So this plan, Drug Approval Denationalization, is a way to free up pre-market approval. It is a politically sensible and politically moderate way. Once enacted in the United States, drug companies will go to the national agency that offers speed and cooperation. If the agencies charge fees, as the FDA does, they will be especially likely to want the business. They will compete in being efficient, reasonable, and yes, generous with approval. The reform will change the way the agencies function. Medically speaking, people are pretty much alike the world over. Canadians are basically like Americans, ditto all around the world. If making a drug available is useful in another country, it will be useful in America too. It really doesn't make sense to exclude drugs that have become available in Canada, Britain, and so on. You might suspect that I'm a shill for Big Pharma. No, I'm just another honest economist and have never had any links with Big Pharma. The reform would be a big win for humanity, and if Big Pharma also wins, then good for them. Big Pharma should not be viewed as a bad guy in this. But it is not clear that Big Pharma would win from this. If competition in drug approval got agencies to cater better to small, diverse drug makers around the world, then Big Pharma might lose its position as a sort of broker for dealing with the FDA. There would be more competition in pharmaceutical supply. There would be more drugs available and lower prices. This relates to the issue of patent life. A lot of people think they should be shorter, and I too incline that way. So long as drug development is so costly, protracted, and uncertain, however, it is hard to see a shortening of patent life. But if we freed up drug approval, the drug companies would have an easier time in developing new drugs, and we could push more effectively for shortening patent life. Drug approval denationalization is a way to make the agencies more responsive to the needs of humanity. If the government of the United States makes this one simple change, 40 years from now, our children and children of those throughout the world will be much healthier than they otherwise would be.